application is not processed, but unfortunately they may use it to inform the income tax department also that so and so has not filed the return. So in case they have not filed, better not to opt for settlement. Do not submit that information to SEBI and then regret it later. Best is, if you have no income tax returns filed, not to go for settlement. Proceed with adjudication. You have to file a copy of the income tax returns that have been filed for the last 3 years. Individual, same rule. You should write self-attested with, and for companies, it should be certified true copy with a C. And annual reports of the company for the last 3 years, and if the applicant is a listed entity, then unaudited results for this stub period which have been filed with the exchange also must be kept. And then if you are going for a settlement for non-compliances, copy of all the compliances made must be filed. Now here is the catch. Suppose our company, let's say, is in Bangalore or in Madras, and we have to make a filing in the Bombay Stock Exchange. All that we will do is use the courier, or sometimes we may email it. There will be no proof of acknowledgement from the BSE or the NSE. Now SEBI says, please show the proof of acknowledgement that you have filed. We cannot say that because we are not, our office is located elsewhere, and there is no mechanism to show that we have filed it there, except the courier acknowledgement, that courier proof, or the email. If you have sent an email, the proof of the email. So that has to be fixed. That was a copy of that also has to be taken and put on the paper that you are showing as filed with the exchange as proof that this document has been filed with the exchange. Without that, SEBI will not process the application. It will come back because they say just enclosing copies that you have made compliance is not enough. You have to show us proof that you actually complied with the compliances. One of the cases, they did not have any of the proof. What they did was they took a photo shoot of what is appearing on the website. This is good enough. Nobody can create a website. SEBI refused to accept. They said, we want your proof, not what is appearing on the stock exchange website, which is highly unreasonable. Unfortunately, we have to deal with an unreasonable authority. We have no choice. So the onus is on us to keep all the proofs with us. So no proof should be destroyed. As a matter of principle, every proof should be stuck onto the page which we are filing, so that tomorrow we can take photocopies of all these compliances, the copies of the compliances. Then in case the applicant is a company, copy of the board resolution authorizing this company to make the application, along with the resolution should also say that X or Y or Z should be authorized to sign that application. So the board resolution should have 2 paragraphs. 1, authorizing company to file the application. 2, that so and so is authorized to sign this application, and the same person should sign all the pages, initial all the pages, and sign the application at the relevant places in full wherever required. Now when it is the undertaking that has to be signed, if there are 10 applicants, the stamp paper undertaking should be signed by all the 10 applicants, although the application is being made by one person on behalf of the 10. That is one another area where we will always slip. We say we have authorized X to file, so let X only sign the stamp paper undertaking. No. As far as the undertaking, where waivers and other things go, all the applicants must sign that undertaking, while it is sufficient for the one applicant who is authorized to sign the other pages of the application. This is a very important thing. Once the application has been considered by SEBI and everything is in order, then they will call us for hearing. In case it is returned to your office, one small point before we get into this, in case after making our best efforts, the application comes back, no need to worry. We get another 15 days to rectify the errors and submit it, because many a times we really don't know or don't understand what they want, so their letter could act as a good checklist, so we can correct the errors and submit it. So to make an error or to make a mistake is not a sin, we can always correct it. So that also facility is always there, we get 15 days time.
Only to the extent of applying.
First it's applying.
Yeah, but if you have make a mistake or an error, otherwise for non-disclosure you have to pay.
That is much greater. So in fact, in one of the cases, we actually made the application, and on that morning, a new format had been notified. So I didn't see the website, all application, everything was ready. So went and very grandly submitted the application, informed the client we have submitted application, everything is done. and then after 4 days the application comes back saying it is not in the new format has been notified. It was notified the previous evening at 6 o'clock, but everything was ready for filing the next morning, so it came back. So I had to cut a sorry figure, but the only good thing is got 15 days time, rectified the whole thing, put it all in order and sent it again. So even if it happens, not to worry, because you always get another 15 days to correct it, but after the correction, if you submit again wrongly, you don't get a second chance. You know, in life there is only one chance. So there is no second chance, so that is not possible. So once everything is submitted, everything is in order, they will call us for the internal committee meeting, and wherein the settlement is arrived at based on the formula. If it is acceptable, we submit the revised consent terms. If not, the application is rejected, and then it goes back to adjudication or wherever it was. And after we submit the RCT, it is placed before another committee called as High Power Action Committee, and they will in turn recommend and accept the amount, and then the final amount is remitted to SEBI. In case it is before SAT, same procedure is followed. The only thing is, instead of SEBI or the adjudicating officer passing the order, it will be passed by SAT after they include any other extra terms and conditions that they want to add on. Suppose they feel that the settlement terms is very mild and just is not enough, then they would probably add some more stringent or stiffer terms. Generally they don't do, they just accept what SEBI says. So that is the way it is. What are those matters which are not settled? However, there are certain things which cannot be settled through the settlement mechanism. One such thing is when an open offer has not been made. Now there are two ways of looking at it. Open offer has not been made at all, then no way, we have to go to adjudication. Suppose we make it with a delay, and it has been done voluntarily with a delay, you can settle it, for which the penalty is 25 lakhs. Wherein we make it with a delay, but it is after the direction of SEBI. SEBI says you make the open offer, and we say okay, we make the open offer, then it will be 50 lakhs. So where it is voluntarily delayed, 25 lakhs. Where it is done after the direction of the board, 50 lakhs. Either way we don't make it, we cannot settle it at all. Then it has to remain only in adjudication. Indulging in insider trading or communicating certain unpublished price sensitive information. Suppose I am in possession of some price sensitive information. Let's say I am a board member, and then I know this company is going to come out with a bonus issue or they are planning a buyback. So what I do, I communicate that to my friend, and my friend in turn communicates it to somebody else, and then they purchase the shares of the company. I have been the instrument in communicating. Second man is also equally responsible. Now both of us will be booked under insider trading regulations for communicating unpublished price sensitive information, and we both cannot avail of the settlement process. We will have to face necessary action under adjudication or inquiry, depending upon where it goes. Any fraudulent and unfair trade practice, which means market manipulations, indulging in price rigging, front running, grey market, all that is not consensual. Any default that is done by an alternate investment fund, CIS, collective investment scheme, or a mutual fund, not consentable. Non-disclosure of information under ICDR, that is in the prospectus. We don't make a disclosure or make an incorrect disclosure, not consentable. Any failure to redress investor grievances, not consentable. Running a collective investment scheme without registration, not consentable. Non-compliance of summons. First thing when I started, if you get a letter, please respond. Reason being, if we don't respond, then they will issue summons. They will say, you are summoned to appear before us on this date. And if there also we do not cooperate, then it leads to the gradation of the violation increases, becomes more serious, and then that is also not consentable. It can only be settled, it can only go to adjudication. It will not even go to adjudication, it will directly go to inquiry, which is even more serious than adjudication. And in case there are any orders that have been passed by SEBI and that has not been complied with, then also it is not consentable. Sometimes, even though your non-compliance or the violation is a consentable one, it can go for settlement, but still the settlement application is not entertained. Why? Because the investigation pertaining to that has not been completed. So we file the application voluntarily. We ourselves know the day we get the letter, we say, okay, let us go for settlement. So we file an application. However, it will not be taken up, or it might even come back. Reason being, investigation department has not completed its investigation until and unless they do their finding and submit their findings to the concerned authorities, their officers within, your application for settlement will not be entertained. That is one of the reasons why it cannot be entertained. And if the person commits a default within 2 years of getting the order, then also the second default, they will not entertain the settlement application. Here I am reminded of one case, very interesting case. It was a multinational company which had not complied with the erstwhile 8.3. So they had, and the promoters had not, of that company, not complied with 7.1a and so on. So after a long process, settlement we had done, and the date was April 11th of 2012. The last date for complying with the disclosure under Regulation 30 of the new regulations SAST 2011. Once we finished, we had come out of the hall, and then I told the company secretary to please submit the revised consent terms, and then he said, now this is over, what about 2011, when are we supposed to file the disclosures? So then and there he had committed the second default because his promoters are from the USA, they were sleeping at that time, and the last date for compliance was 11th April of 2012. So I told him today is the last day, even today by 4 o'clock if they could submit, it would be fine. But when we came out of the hall itself, it was around 1:45. So by the time, and his company was from Bangalore, by the time he goes back to Bangalore, fills up the form, sends it to the US and gets it back, I don't know when he actually filed and whether it was done on time. I'm sure it has not been done on time. And the second default will definitely not come under settlement. So therefore, any default that is committed within 2 years of the last settlement cannot be settled. And if an application for the same default has been rejected earlier, then you cannot submit it afresh and say, there were some errors then, please accept it now. That's also not possible. And then, if you have more than 2 settlement orders in a period of 36 months, then also it cannot be done. That means within 3 years, you can have only 2 settlement orders. You cannot have more than 2. So you cannot go on applying for settlement. So that is why the settlement regulation clearly says, whatever be the non-compliances, settle it in one go. So that you don't have to come back to us again and again. Because we will not entertain the application again and again. So they advise us to actually identify all the non-compliances. Even if we don't identify, during the internal committee meeting, they will help us identify. They will point it out to us, and they encourage and urge us to settle everything in one shot. Once we have gone there, it's better to settle everything in one go. And if more than one proceeding, suppose adjudication is also pending, inquiry is also pending, something else is also pending, then they will advise not to go for settlement and wait, advise the person to wait until all the proceedings are completed so that one application can be submitted. And if the application is filed 60 days after the receipt of the show cause notice. Now it says issue of show cause notice. Issue does not, we do not really understand whether it's the date of show cause notice or the date of receipt of show cause notice. So it's always better to presume it is the date of the show cause notice, and from that day onwards 60 days. In case you want to file it beyond 60 days, can I? Yes, definitely we can, but we should submit adequate reasons for the delay and request that the same be condoned. Then before accepting, they will condone the delay and accept the application, but that should not become a matter of routine, that every time we submit after 60 days. So as a rule, it shouldn't be done, but in exceptional cases, yes, it is not possible. We can file after 60 days with adequate reasons. If the settlement application is not accepted or it is rejected, then both the parties, whatever, SEBI and the other party will be informed that whatever the proceedings which were kept in abeyance will be restarted, legal proceedings can be initiated. But one thing is, whatever happened during the settlement process will remain the property of that department only. It is not open to anybody. It cannot form a part of any other proceedings. Even an RTI query will not get you anything out of that department. It's completely secret. So that is assured. So that is why this is one of the better mechanisms. Now, coming to the last bit, how to calculate the penalty. That is a big table Now I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of that table which runs itself into about 12 or 13 pages, but we will take simple calculation. Essentially, it is the settlement amount will be A into B plus legal costs, and A is equal to proceeding conversion factor plus regulatory action factor. Proceeding conversion factor would mean what is the amount that I give depending upon which stage of the proceedings I am under. So suppose I am going for consent and settlement and I have gone voluntarily, then my PCF would be 0.75. If I am going after receipt or show cause notice, then it will be 0.85. If I am doing it after I go to SAT, it will be 1.2. So depending upon which stage I am, the PCF will be determined. And as far as RAF is concerned, it is the regulation action factor, which means suppose I go for settlement the second time, that is when RAF will come to effect, and that will be X plus Y. And X will be equal to, if suppose I had a consent earlier, then I will give 0.01. If I had a warning, then I will give 0.015. If I have a WTM order, then I will give myself 0.075. And then there will be a Y. Y will depend upon where the inquiry has initiated from, where it is, whether it is with WPM or whether it is an inquiry or whether it's a chairman's order. Depending upon that, SEBI will levy that Y. So Y is an uncertain factor, and in case we have had something in the past, then depending upon who passed the order, we have to determine Y, which they have always given Y, but it could change because SEBI has the freedom to push you into any other table or into any other district that it could, okay, this could fit into a previous slab or it could fit into the next slab. So depending upon what it is, Y will be determined. So RAF is always X plus Y, and so therefore A, which is PCF plus RAF, will give you what is A, and what is B will be your benchmark amount into base value. And for example, what is the benchmark amount? It depends upon the violation. Suppose it is an SAST non-disclosure by a company under regulation 83 or the current regulation 30. Then it will be 1 lakh per non-violation or per non-compliance. Which means, suppose I have not disclosed for 14 years, 83 from 98 to 2011, then it will be 14 into 1 lakh, which will be 14 lakhs. As we've already seen, the application will be processed only if you attach proof of the disclosures that have been made. So, depending upon the day when we actually file the disclosure, the quarter violation, the number of quarters of delay will be calculated. So, suppose we have filed it, let us say whatever has to be filed in 1998, we have filed it in 2014. So, from 98 to 2014, the number of days delay will be taken, divided by 90, which will give you the number of quarters. For each quarter of delay, if it is an 8-3 violation or a 31 violation, it would be 5,000 rupees per quarter of delay. If it's an insider trading non-disclosure, then what we will do is we look at which percentage. What is the percentage of non-disclosure? If it is, let's say, up to 2%, then it will be 1.5 lakhs per non-disclosure per violation plus 7,500 per quarter of delay. If it is more than 2, then it becomes 2.5 lakhs plus 12,500. So it depends on which slab we fit in, accordingly the violation will come. Suppose the violation is under both SAST as well as under insider trading. Then we have to calculate under both. One of them will be taken in full and the lower of the two, which is always SAST, will be reduced by 75%. So which means suppose we get 2 lakhs under insider trading and we get 1.5 lakhs under SAST, then it will be 2 lakhs plus 25% of 1.5 lakhs for one violation. And if the amount of that settlement amount comes to less than 2 lakhs for the first non-compliance, the first settlement time we go for settlement, minimum amount that will be levied is 2 lakh rupees. And if we go again second time, then the minimum amount levied is 5 lakh rupees. So the minimum amount, irrespective, suppose we get only 25,000 as per settlement, as per all their formula. After long calculation we come to 25, we should not exult because the minimum they will anyway levy or charge is 2 lakh rupees. Sometimes when you go to the internal committee, you may have 3-4 non-compliances, and in one particular case, I added up everything and then came to something, but they had actually said for each non-compliance minimum amount is 2 lakhs, so they had given maybe 2 lakhs minimum for each non-compliance. So sometimes some committee changes the rules like that, some of them say put everything together, give it as 2 lakhs. But as on plain reading of the regulation, it is add up all your non-compliances, calculation, minimum shall be 2 lakh rupees. So that is how the calculation is done. Normally base value is 1. So because B is equal to base, the benchmark amount into base value. So what is the base value that we normally give? If it is ordinary case, no discounts, no benefits, 1. So whatever amount we get there into 1. That into we multiply by A. That is B is arrived at and into A. But if the capital of the company is less than 10 crore rupees, we get a 50% discount. So it is multiplied by 0.50. Suppose we have made a timely disclosure under some other regulation. Suppose I am charged with non-disclosure under insider trading, but I have made it under SAST. Then I have to multiply by only 0.60. I get a 40% discount. Suppose I have made a disclosure under listing agreement. Say I am saying I have made a disclosure under clause 35. I have not done under 30, but I have made a disclosure under clause 35, which is on that is again timely disclosure. That shouldn't be delayed. So under timely disclosure, or I have done under some other sub-regulation. I should have given under 7.1, but I have given under 1.8. Then I get a 45% discount. I have to multiply by 0.55. So based on all these calculations, we arrive at the amount. So one simple example here, the disclosure is not made under 8.3 from 1998 to 2011, and it has actually been filed on 3/5 of 2011. So the total number of violations is 14 and the period of delay is 52 quarters. So what would be the amount here? There is no RAF because there is no other action that has been taken. So first of all we have to determine A, which is PCF. If it is voluntarily, it will be 0.75. If it is after reciprocal cost, it will be 0.85. Now what is the period of delay? 52 quarters. So B will be arrived at 14 into 1 lakh. Because it is under 8.3, so 1 lakh per non-compliance. So 14 into 1 lakh, 14 lakhs plus 5,000 per quarter of delay, 5,000 into 52, which comes to 2 lakh 70,000, 2 lakh 60,000. So 14 lakhs plus 2 lakh 60, 16 lakh 60,000. If the capital of the company is less than 10 crores, that will be divided by 2. If it is not, it will be kept as 16.6 into 1. Into 0.75 or 0.85, that will be the settlement amount. So on reciprocal cost, which is for such a matter, first you calculate as like this, then you decide whether you want to be here or you want to go for adjudication. Look up the earlier orders of the same officer. If adjudication seems to be better, proceed for adjudication. If you feel no, it's better to go for settlement, amount is less, go for settlement. But don't regret whichever decision you take, because either way, penalty is not going to be very different. A maximum of 1 lakh to 2 lakhs, this way, that way. Sometimes this is more, sometimes that is more. Of course, there is no stigma, but the procedures that are involved in settlement is far more strenuous than in adjudication. Because in adjudication, you only write a reply, you collect all your papers, and it is more of gift to the gap, presentation skills. In settlement, it is more of putting all your papers together and ensuring that the application is in perfect form or in shape. Otherwise, it might get rejected. Thank you so much. Any questions are there? Any questions?
Why SEBI is taking 10 years back case now?
And I would also like to ask them the same questions and harassing people, but unfortunately we have no choice.
Close the stable horses. In DLF case, shareholders have lost like anything. Now there's a collections. I don't know where exactly the justice is.
So you're looking at a big player like DLF, sir. I can tell you small companies which are listed on regional exchanges which want to go for delisting now. But when they go approach these regional exchanges, now they say you have not complied with 8.3, this and that, and they send them to SEBI. And these companies which have not got any benefits from listing are now made to shell out 16 lakhs, 17 lakhs under settlement. This is very unfair. They have not got any benefit of listing. And what were the stock exchanges doing when they did not file from 98 or 99 or 2000? It's as much the mistake of the stock exchange as is that of the company. So they shouldn't be doing, but unfortunately we can't help it.
Being an insider once upon.
No, those days were very different. Those days, I feel those days they were more practical, and now they have become hardliners. They are very particular about compliance. And for things which you have not, which you feel very strongly is not a non-compliance also, they are going all out to prove that it is a non-compliance. Which is where the difficult part is.
Also, in case of market intervening like me, asking for 10 years and then the client is no with me.
Absolutely, I
It's
agree.
like,
In one company, they said they had lost everything by fire. They said the onus to show us the records is on you. He said, I'm giving you the FIR. My office was gutted by fire. So, unfortunately, we are living in such an environment. All that we can do is compliance, compliance, compliance. Of course, it is expensive.
It's a major cost center.
And I'm telling you
I
now,
think the gentleman wants to raise a
Yeah.
question, sir.
What you mentioned, digital stock exchange application for delisting market file, they need to be filed also. Automatically, the system is so transparent that your application to digital stock exchange goes to SEBI also, they are also aware of it.
it's not like that. See, suppose I apply to Madras Stock Exchange for delisting. And then Madras Stock Exchange tells me that unless we have all these non-compliances because that is their last chance to get whatever they want to get. And they collect their listing fee which is not being paid for so long, and at the same time point out all these non-compliances. And unless you get it settled by SEBI and show them the settlement order
If I withdraw my application for delisting,
from the stock exchange, then there is no problem. But then what will you do after that? But if it is BSE or NSE, it goes to SEBI. If it is a regional exchange, they have their own rush to settle, so they also don't communicate to SEBI. But then, unless and until you show them the settlement order, or the matter has been disposed of in either way, they will not process the delisting application.
Thank you. The speaker has dealt with the practical experience what she had and gave the practical tips how to go for the settlement and whether we should go for settlement or for adjudication. Before we offer valuable vote of thanks, Kanura, do you have something to share?
As chairman of the committee, technically speaking, being late, so all the aspects of chairman are accepted very positively by BCA, but nevertheless I was only say apology for being there. But nevertheless, I would like to put something on the record that Paras, Nitin, Samir, Neha, all of them have been working very hard. The society staff have been working hard. But I think, knowing that I am late also, but I decided to come specifically to recognize the efforts done by two people for organizing this program, and they are none other than Jayant Thakur and Bhavesh. So I think I wish to put their sincere appreciation for all the effort done, particularly Jayant, when we had tough time yesterday morning that Mr. Merchant could not come in spite of his best efforts, and he agreed to speak at the last moment also. I think they deserve a very special appreciation by all the participants. So that's the only thing I wanted to say. Nothing to comment, I think Paras is the chairperson. So I know in the insider trading, a lot of things are happening. Everybody wants to be what once upon a time somebody used to be the top guy, but how the US did the insider trading. Possibly I am the one who look for that kind of proposition as an individual investor. That such thing should come in India also. Nevertheless, the penalty levied on the penalty issue on the MK Global and firing to the energy, that's a burning issue. So individually I am a little falling into different box. Some of you will not like me, but I would say yes, should be levied, should be done and should be punished. That's how I look at it. But nevertheless, I think the learned speaker has been very kind enough, so let me go to the procedural part. Thank you for the same.
Thank you, Kanura. May I request Samir to offer valuable vote of thanks?
I'm sure all the participants would agree that the learned speaker was like a well-experienced surgeon who incisively cut across whatever was the crux of the matter. She arrived straight at the issues. She said how to deal with it, what are the remedies available,